Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Experiment Nation, this message is for you if you are a short-term rental host. Pay attention closely, because if you recall, we had an individual by the name of Mark Simpson step into our lab and tell us the importance of building a short-term rental business where your clients and future guests are booking with you directly, not solely depending on OTAs such as Airbnb, VRBO, Expedia.com, the list goes on. And his reasoning behind it is that you want to leverage these OTAs and not be solely dependent on them so that you can actually build your business that you are in control of. Extremely important for you to do this, for you to be in control of your business and grow and scale it properly. Now, I did read the book from beginning to end, and the announcement is that he has launched a book called the Book Direct Playbook, which launches this February 2022. You want to make sure you get your hands on this book, because I certainly did from beginning to end, and I got more than just about OTAs. He gave the foundation of true marketing, which is a specialty that he does because he is the founder of Boostly, who has helped numerous hosts over and over build very credible websites that allow the guests to book with you directly. Now, I want to highlight something. It's very important that you understand that Mark is not saying to not use OTAs. He's saying to leverage them to then be in control to build your own business. And he actually gives a very key gold template on how to actually create an incentive for your hosts, or your guests, I should say, to stay with you as a host by booking with you directly. There is a strategic way to do this, and he does cover this in his book. You want to make sure that you get his book at the link below. You see right here, boostly.co.uk/book. In this book, it will give you the foundations, marketing foundations, a key guide to guide, and at the same time, every chapter has the instructions sections that gives you guidelines on what the next call to action, what the next step is. You need to refer to it the exact same way you would refer to any book you have in a lab as a practitioner who's going to take action to take control of your short-term rental business. Again, that is boostly.co.uk/book. That's boostly.co.uk/book. Make sure you get your hands on this book. You will not be disappointed.
Real Estate Experiment, what is happening, y'all? Today, I have the pleasure of having Bill Gross here in the lab with me, who's in his own lab, dialing all the way from the West Coast in Los Angeles. Now, Bill is known as the LA Probate expert, that's for sure. And, I'm curious as to, seeing how it all ties in together, because I know you got your roots deep into real estate. We got another former EXP realtor as well. I'm also licensed as well at EXP. I know it's a great company we're working for, but I'm really excited to just dive in, because we have never had, we're 160 plus episodes in. I have yet to have a probate expert. So therefore that means we are well overdue to hear this knowledge, but I also want to hear how it ties in with the other things that go on in your life, as well as you're a man with many deep-rooted connections in the real estate community. So without further ado, welcome to the lab, Bill. What's going on?
Thanks. Great to be here. From the West Coast, the best coast. Glad to be here.
Listen, I always say this. I say hustle in the East, invest in the South, and rest in the West. So you are ahead of the game, my friend. And
I'm not resting. It's 3 p.m. on December 29th. I'm not resting, man. I'm hustling. I'm hustling as hard as you were when you were a young guy and hungry.
I still am. That's still me. So that's awesome. So let's talk about that. I think that's a great segue. So let's talk. You said the young guy, you still hustling. Before I even get into the business side of things, I always like to find out a little bit about the backstory, because I believe we as practitioners, that's who we have here in the lab with us, are a reflection. Our business is a reflection of us first. So why don't you just take a step back to, who is Bill Gross? Who was Bill Gross before, and how, who is the Bill Gross that we're looking at now, and kind of see that trajectory into the connection between, back maybe when you were a little younger, hustling even a little bit more, or maybe you're hustling more now. What's the story here?
I just changed my name here. I realized I was who I am now is Bill Gross. I was Annabelle Pacheco, somebody on my team. I just hosted her Zoom call right before this. So I'll get to that, explain how I have that role. I grew up in Southern California. Like most Southern Californians, very active athletically in all kinds of sports. As I got into high school, I kind of fell behind a little bit athletically, but looking to compete, I got involved in debate and speech. I got on the debate team in high school and finished third state of California, and then went to college on a scholarship at USC, competed there, competing for the national championship. I was ranked in the top 10 in the country at one point. So did real well in that with the idea of getting into law. But when I finished college, I was broke. I didn't owe anything. I had a scholarship, but I wanted to make money right away. So I got into computers and electronics and did that for a while. And then my brother had gone into real estate. He was a mortgage lender. And one day we went to lunch, and on the way back from lunch, he said, "Hey, let's go in this office real quick. Just pretend like you're my partner." And I did that. And it was really kind of cool because instead of talking about electronics and computers and stuff, it was like talking to people about their houses. And then we went to lunch again, like a week or two later, same thing. We played along. And that was his way of recruiting me. And we ended up being partners for a little while, and then working together, starting in the business in 1986. So I've been in real estate since then. And in various iterations, I was a lender. I've been in sales, management, and ownership. And I've run my own business. I've managed large teams and large companies. Currently, I'm building a national real estate team. I focus in probate myself in LA, California. And then I teach other members of my team probate business in other counties around the United States. We just opened in Atlanta, Georgia this month. So, and then I help my agents build their business by doing their own live streams. So I just did one right before we were on. That was Annabelle Pacheco does one on multifamily investing out of state. So I helped her launch that. And then today she's traveling, so I was her substitute teacher. So today it looks like I have my own book of business. And then I also spend a lot of time helping my team members build their income and their wealth.
Interesting. Well, that's very neat. And I appreciate you kind of covering, the fast forward from 1986 until now. You mentioned sales, management, ownership, lender. Which one do you feel that, you know what, that's one where, if you're stuck doing, you'd probably be, just doing only just that.
I think that there were various phases of my life. I don't think I could have started full-time as a real estate salesperson without any income, or I didn't have the confidence to do it. So in the mortgage business, typically you get a little bit of an advance, enough to starve, but enough to pay the bills for the first 3 months or so. And so it gives you a few months to get some deals in the pipeline and pay it back. So I started mortgages, and that's why that worked for me. I think when the mortgage crisis hit in 2008, I had been with, 12 companies in 13 years, not because I changed companies, but they kept going out of business or merging. And I realized I was so dependent on the company. I didn't like that part. I was tired of, who the regional manager was and who the underwriter was, whereas real estate sales is all about your own business. So I was wanting to put my own chips in and say, okay, I'm going to build my own business as an agent. And I did that. And so I think that, real estate is a very broad industry with a lot of different niches you can move into. If you get bored of one, you can move into another. So I don't know there's one I would stay in for an entire career, but I would say that I love what I do now. I both have my own book of business, but I also work every day with agents on my team and help them build their business. I like doing both.
Interesting. That's a good segue, actually, because the next question I was going to ask is, for someone starting out, and it's funny that you mentioned that real estate has a lot of different verticals, because it does. And that's actually why we started the podcast when I say I haven't had a probate guys, because you can only imagine 160 episodes of different topics we've talked about, from short-term rentals to storage to notes to, it's endless, right? And so for you, when you're looking back at, someone who's listening who says, the key question, hey, I want to get into real estate. Right. When you think of planting that pillar of, okay, what would be most powerful seed? Some people are like, wholesaling. Some people, what is one thing that you feel like gives you a good, maybe a good foundation going in? Would it be, if you were starting out the young Bill, would you start with sales, interacting with people? Would you understand the lending component, so you kind of understand what funds the real estate? Like, what would you, looking back, say to the younger Bill who might be listening today, of what they should double down on, maybe as a first foundation?
I give career advice to people leaving high school or maybe couple years of college and they're not on a career track and consider real estate. I tell them get a job somewhere that's going to pay you a salary, but learn. So find the biggest organization you can get a job at, because the bigger organizations, you tend to see a much bigger horizon. You're in a small piece, you have very little authority. But I worked at the time, the second largest lender in California, but to make a living, I do so many units. Whereas as a mortgage broker, I could make a good living on, say, 2 a month. To make the same money at the bank, I had to do 15 to 20 a month. But doing 15 to 20, I learned so much more faster. I met so many more people more quickly that I would say if you can't afford to go full time, don't do it part time. Find a job in real estate with the biggest company you can and look at it as a paid college job. They're paying you. You know, I had a scholarship to go to college. I had to work hard, though, to keep the scholarship. And I would say, look at it like that, but they're going to pay you money. They pay you $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year, $50,000 a year, but you're learning an industry that a couple of years from now is going to be your business. So my advice, usually, if you're starting out and don't have extra money or can't afford to finance it, get a job in the industry, the biggest company you can in the industry that you want to work with. That's my normal starting advice. And I would say for people who are in real estate sales and they're at it and they have a deal or two, or they're struggling, they're trying to get started, they're trying to go from survival to being in a business. The 2 things I tell them are, number 1, either you're an employee on a full commission or you own a business. You've got to decide. For me, I have a business. Now, I use a business to pay the bills, but I'm the one who has to be responsible for my time, effort, and energy, nobody else. And so I have to act like it. I have to show up on time. I have to get to work every day on time. If I hired me, I would expect me at my desk before 8 o'clock. It's only when we're self-employed, we roll in at 9:30 or 10 o'clock and think that's okay. We would never allow an employee we paid, even minimum wage, to do that. So if you first have to get the attitude that you own a business, unless you're an employee. And if there's anything wrong with being an employee, if that works for you. For me, I'm an entrepreneur. I wanted to build my own business. The second thing I tell new people, the biggest mistake they make, because they don't treat it like it's a business, they don't build their business, which is your business is your database. Your business is your network. Your network is your net worth. And so even when you work for a bank and you meet, 1,000 people a month, if you keep every name, number, and phone number and address of everybody you meet along the way, or keep all those business cards, you could in a year create a career's worth of contacts. And I see so many people who are successful who did just that. They worked at Wells Fargo or Chase or Bank of America for a year or two in some obscure branch. But they met so many people that when they went into real estate, they had all those contacts and rolled that into a business right away. So every agent, the biggest mistake they make is not building their foundation, which is the name, address, phone number, and email of the people that know you, like you, and trust you. And if you build that, even if you're working as an employee, over time, you have a business you're building. When the time comes to launch, you can be in conversation with all those people about a real estate practice. That's what you want to do.
Oh, Bill, this was really powerful. I know it's funny because you're so into this that
I love this.
Not even realize how powerful what you said. And the reason why it's powerful because I myself, I have a lot of guests who come on here. I read a lot of books. This one, you tied that really, really well. And I want to bring this one home and just echo this because you said something key. You said, and especially in this day and age when entrepreneurship is so sexy, one of the things you said is you have first find a job that will almost pay for your education. And I love what you said about the volume piece, because you just went up deep on so many different layers. Like find a job. Okay, that's one thing. Now that job, and this is one thing we talk about, the exposure. Do you get exposed to a lot of different experiments, as I would call it in this lab, right? Well, yes. And if you do great, you want that volume to get exposure because you're learning and you're getting paid for it, right? Now, this is important because I think there's a big message out there of entrepreneurship, and it's great. But if it's not, if it's not used properly, it's like an instrument. You're not going to go anywhere with it. And there's so many people who have done very, 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 very well for themselves, top percentile, working at a company. And what you're talking about is going deep. Now, the other thing that I loved is the opportunity that you have within a job. We don't talk about that often. Like being at a local branch, making those key connections. People do business with people, so that when you do decide, now this goes back to personal branding, which is one thing we always talk about in my agency, is people will do business with Bill. People will do business with X person. So it doesn't really matter what the brokerage is after. It doesn't really, that can change. People will do business with Bill. And what you said was so key, because if you're working in a job and you're fostering these key relationships and you're doing your job, you're essentially building your book of business on someone else's dollar, which again, if you're building that business and you're bringing business, you're doing your job effectively, it's a win-win situation. And I've never really heard anybody really say it like that. I've heard of a few people talk about, go with the lowest hanging fruit. But this was, you tied that so well together. And then you said business is your database and your business is your net worth, and and it's your net worth, right? Your network is your net worth, right? Whew, my goodness, this is so good. So let me ask you, this is good because when I first started out, I think we might be able to relate with a lot of people when we have this discussion, especially you having a team. And I don't know if you knew, but we do invest in Atlanta. So when you said you opened a team out in Atlanta, it's such serendipity. But you mentioned a key thing where you said you talked about the team. So the sales, from a salesperson, do I get my license and do it solo and start building my own connections, or do I actually integrate myself in a team environment and where maybe I learn from somebody, or I don't think there's a number one answer, but I'm very curious as to what you say to someone who asks you that question, who's a new agent. Let me just be very clear, because I was all over the place there. When you're a new agent, if I hang my license with you, perhaps with your brokerage, and I say, hey, I don't know if I should join a team, or I don't know if I should go out on my own, what advice do you give to that person?
Well, I use the word team in a broad sense. Like you and I are a team now. That's how I look at it. Absolutely. Right? It's the real estate is a team business. It's a collection of individuals, but when they learn to work together, it's a whole different business. And you can't really do it on your own. You need good vendors, you need good partners, you need good investors, you need good admin people. I don't have a team in the classic sense that I have people who work and I get a percentage of their income. They're on a lower commission split because they're on my team. We offer that at EXP. When people are new, I refer them to a friend of mine who has such a team where he does a lot more of the coaching and mentorship to help them get through the first 3 transactions. So when I say team, really at EXP, we're all shareholders. We're all part of the same team. We have 70,000 agents. So you and I are team members in that sense. I just happen to bring somebody on board in Atlanta that I'm going to collaborate with on my business as I get referrals in Atlanta and he gets referrals in Los Angeles. Probate is more liable for that, or more involved with that. But I think the mistake new people make is they're being recruited by people into a team because it works for the team leader, not because it works for the team member. And that's where my biggest complaint is. Almost 99% of the time, the team concept promised to the team member isn't really a good fit. I would rather see you get a job as their ISA, their inside sales associate, or their admin person, get paid a salary, because they're going to make sure they get their money's worth out of you by paying you money. But if you join them and you promise them 20, 30, 40, 50% of their commission, they're going to help you to a degree. But if you don't make it, you're just a straight commission employee to them. They're not invested really in you. That's my experience of watching since the team concept became important about 10 years ago, that it's always designed by the team leader for the team leader's benefit and very rarely for the team member. And I don't mean to disparage everybody, but that's just been my experience. And so I would caution you, when you go on the internet, you see these great national figures talking to you about joining their team. I get so many agents who come to me complaining that I signed up and they've just disappeared on me, because they look at it as, well, now you're signed up, and if you close a deal, they get paid. If you don't, they just sign up 5 more people. They don't really care. So I'd be very careful about joining teams unless you know the team leader, the track record, other people who are in your situation getting what you want. Now, that said, if you happen to meet a team and they happen to have a couple team members a few months ahead of you and they're doing what you want to do, great. Check it out thoroughly. But to join a team because they're going to break you all promises, I just find so many people disappointed with that experience.
That's such a good recap there. That is important. That it's really important to look at who has your best interest. That's for sure. In everything that you do.
And it goes back to something a mentor taught me when I was an employee. He said, your mindset's wrong. You own your own business. It's called Bill Gross. You just sold your time to me for 40 hours a week. I'm one customer and you've given me all your time. He said, you have to look at it as your business and you have to improve your skills, improve your ability to make more in the marketplace. I am your one customer, but you still have to invest in yourself and treat yourself like you're a business. So just like any other business, yeah, if I sold most of my goods to one customer, I still would try to hustle to sell to other customers after hours on the weekends. He says, you're a business. You need to find a way to make more money than just what you're selling to me. And I think that's true with joining a team is you might look at joining a team because they have a track record of success and you want to be around it and learn from them. Then, okay, you're taking a smaller commission split to learn from them. Great. Don't think they're going to make you a lot more money. That's not what they're going to do. They're not, the last thing they're about is making you money. They're about the reason why people run a business is to make themselves money. But if along the way, they give you leads, they give you appointments, they give you real experience, they can promise you an open house every week to host, fine, then that might be worth a trade off your time to learn the process. But remember, you're trading that in the beginning, your most valuable asset is you. You're investing in you. Don't look at the money. Look at how am I going to be a stronger, better resource for my customers a year, 5 years from now, especially when you're young. You've got 30 years of a career to work towards. What's going to get you the rate of return over the next 30 years, not the extra commission on this deal right now.
Long term. I like that. Wow, you are your own business. You have such an interesting way of like your like paradigm shift of, especially when you said the 40 hours, that's your one customer. That's really, I like that. Let's talk about the probate, right? So first of all, this is, you've established yourself in that space, which is not one that I know is common. Maybe it is to you because you're in the space, but for us, we haven't had too many. So I want to just definitely take advantage of your expertise while you're on this platform. First, let's define it. Even for myself, I think it'd be a great reminder of define probate to someone who's listening right now, who's like, okay, I've heard of it. How does this tie with real estate? Let's really understand it. How could you define that for us?
So probate is the process by which assets are transferred from people who are deceased to people who are still alive. So the most common, now I'm in California and our laws, every state has different laws. And then every county has different procedures. But generally speaking, even if you have a will, you need to go through the process of the court in the county approving that will. So there's a misconception. If I have a will, I don't need to go to probate. At least in California, wrong. You have a will, you take it to court, and if the court approves it, then you can do what the will says. A will is probated. A will is administered in a probate court. There are ways to avoid probate. Most commonly with proper estate planning, an example is living trusts. If you own a property in a trust, the trust is funded when somebody passes, but it has in there somebody's appointed to administer the trust, and then they can move the assets based on the rules of that trust. So that can avoid probate. But generally, probate is where people own property in their own name and they die. Sometimes property transfers automatically. Husband and wife most commonly transfers directly to the spouse if they survive. But if it's husband and wife and both pass, even though there might be only one heir and one child, normally you have to go through some process called probate to change the title from the parents to the surviving son, if that's the case. That's probate in a nutshell. That's a short version of it.
No, this is great. And I'm really glad you highlighted the fact that, very, very state and county driven, because I want to make sure that we highlight that as we're speaking, right, that you are the LA expert and over time. So just curious, you talked about your brother pulling you into real estate, right? Just to circle back a bit. When did the probate piece come into play?
Just 3 years ago. So my career, I'm older than you. When I started in the business, the career path was in any business, you go from employee to management. And so I was successful as a salesperson, and my manager approached me and said, "Hey, you're great at this. Why don't you coach other people? I'll make you into a recruiter and a coach, and you'll get paid." And it sounded great. It was a great opportunity to work with a very talented owner. But really, normally in real estate, that's not a very good career track. You can only make so much money. And I did really well. I helped the company double in size and make a lot of money. But it wasn't very fulfilling. At some point, you're tied into the owner. And so just like you see in sports all the time, if the owner doesn't have a winning mentality, if the owner doesn't want to grow, you can't grow as a manager. If the owner's not willing to, take on additional risks or reinvest capital or give you the freedom to make the right decisions. So I was kind of like the classic football coach where when to fire, we had a broker manager who was just incompetent and abusive, but she was the owner's wife's best friend. And I said to the owner, "Hey, as long as she's here, we're never going to grow past the point we're at. Then the best I can with the pieces I have, but she's a major employee. She's the highest paid employee besides me. And she's incompetent and abusive to our staff and negative. And it's really her and me." And he wasn't willing to terminate her because his wife didn't want to, didn't trust. And I appreciate that. The owner wanted somebody they trust intimately in the job. And I just said, "Fine, then I have to leave." So 3 years ago, I find myself out of a job and I knew I could make more money in production than I could in management. So I started from scratch 3 years ago, no leads, no listings, no buyers, nothing. But I knew the business real well. And so I knew I needed to find a niche. And I came across somebody I'd known a long time ago, Don Hobbs. He had founded Hobbs Herder Advertising when I was a young pup. And he had been at Keller Williams running a big coaching program for them. And then he came to eXp Realty, and he has a video called "The Brand Is You." He talks about the importance of branding and a niche. And so I realized I needed to find one. And probate appeals to me. My father was an attorney. I was pre-law. I like wearing suits and ties and going to court. Most people don't. So it worked for me. And so I put together a plan. And our LA County is the largest probate court in America. So it's a big market. And within the probate court, there's some sub niches that are appropriate for me that might not be appropriate in other counties that I worked on. And so I put together a plan and executed that plan 3 years ago. And I went from zero to, last year 3, I closed 42 sides, 3 transactions, and built a really nice business that's continuing to this day.
That's amazing. Can you, I want to make sure this doesn't slip through the cracks, because as you guys know, this podcast is brought to you by Invested Talent, which is a marketing and branding agency. So when you say the word brand, I'm itching to I have to go there.
Yeah.
You said the brand is you,
yeah,
and you had to pick a niche. Like how important, we talked about real estate already to begin with.
Yeah.
And we talk about the different verticals. How important is it to be in a niche? I think you've realized this, but how important is it?
I think it's necessary. Well, look, I'm in a competitive environment. I can't speak across the country, but I know when I go to a networking event with 50 people, there's 5 or 10 other real estate agents there. There's probably 5 people who are other things, insurance agents, something else, and they have a license, and they'll say they're real estate agents also. And there's 5 or so full-time real estate agents. So how do I differentiate myself from other people? And I think that, and we've all been in network events where somebody stands up and says, "Hi, I specialize in first-time buyers, sellers, VA loans, commercial, industrial, short sales, REOs, foreclosures, bridges, farmland, and industrial property." And we all roll our eyes like, "Well, what the hell does that mean?" But when I stand up, I tell them that I specialize in probate and legal real estate. And if you have questions with title or problems in probate or probate court, come see me. I'd be glad to try to help you. And it's different because, number one, anybody with those problems is going to think of me. And number two, what I came to learn about branding was think about it like COVID, when COVID started. Maybe now it's too political, but imagine when it started. Who would you ask about whether or not you should have the vaccine or mask or what you should do? If your best friend was a world-renowned brain surgeon, would you ask him about COVID because he's a genius and a great doctor, or would you not because he doesn't specialize in infectious diseases? You would ask him his opinion because you get he's an expert. And as an expert, he, of course, knows the basics. And so in real estate, what I found was my prospects would assume, because I'm an expert in probate, that I was able to handle selling their house. And I would get the question all the time,
Wow.
"Bill, I know you're a probate expert. Can you help me with my house?"
No
right?
kidding.
Yeah, so it'd be like a brain surgeon. Hey, I just have a common cold. Can you help me? Well, sure. I could take your temperature and run some blood tests and give you some aspirin or whatever you do as a doctor. So that's the power of branding, is that people remember you at a deep level versus the competition.
Ooh, I love that. Again, I've never heard of that. They think of you first, and then they're even willing to ask you if something is within your scope of work. Like
Right.
that is huge,
Right.
Bill. And again,
Right.
I haven't heard anybody say it like this.
Right.
Yeah, I
And
love
it's
that.
true. And it works that way. It's the weirdest thing. I remember, it was a leap of faith, but the first time it happened, I had a client who had like a $1.2 million house. And this was, a year and a half ago, and it was red hot in a red hot area. It was one of those deals that literally had sold before we were going to do any showings, and for over full price. And remember, he said, Bill, I know you're the probate expert, but I just have this, 4-bedroom, 2-bath house and blah, blah, blah. Could you help me sell it? I said, of course I can. I've sold a bunch of houses. Yes. I also think that there's something about to be said for doing volume business, that you learn more. I know a lot of agents are excited. They see TV shows and want to start with a luxury. I think that's a mistake, because you can make a great living selling one $5 million house a year, maybe, but you're only selling one house a year. How good can you get? For example, we just in California, our forms just changed. How familiar are you with the residential purchase agreement form if you haven't done one for 9 months? Versus, because I'm a little lower, probate skews lower income, so I closed 42 sites. So how many contracts do you think I saw in a year? Well, 42 plus every offer that didn't get accepted. So I saw 100, 150 offers in the course of a year. So by doing things more, I think you get better at it. And I do think there's something about the quality of service, the quality of that you can in your niche as well. But definitely, the niche has a very powerful connotation, if you do it properly, of expertise that people are thirsting for.
And that's the thing, that the starving crowd will always go to someone who has what they need.
Yes.
And I think they can only identify you if you make it very clear. I think sometimes we make it so confusing, the things that we put after our titles, our brand, our business. It confuses people, and they just, quite frankly, they don't remember us. So I really wanted to echo that, because I think it's so important, what you've done.
And it's easy to pivot too. So, for example, I had a friend of mine who, before I went into production again, 6 years ago, had called me about a property. I helped him get the property he wanted. I bump into him, and I didn't keep track of him, because back in those days I wasn't in production. I didn't keep his name, his email. He wasn't in my email database. Bump into him a couple weeks ago. He's looking to sell his house. Some investor made him an off-market cash deal because he knew he could get better terms that way, because he didn't want to move out right away. And I said, no. I said, look, I deal with attorneys all the time. I can sell your house in a way that protects you, gives you whatever options you want to move out. That's what I do. That's why I work with attorneys in probate. So I leverage my expertise as to why it works in a non-probate case. And it's real. I'm not making it up. I think that most niches, though, if you do something well, then it applies in the regular case, not just the niche case.
Love it. So let's circle back. You're dropping so many great ingredients for us to experiment in our own labs, as I call it, and continue to experiment. And you're so on brand. Like I said, you couldn't make this up. This wasn't scripted. I think our team does a really good job of making sure we have quality guests like yourself on our platform. But you're talking about all of our core values as an experiment. I said, he who experiments the most wins, right? Volume, and sharpen the axe. You're hitting the nail on the head on every single point that we believe here in our lab. So I just love that you're echoing these. Let's talk about. I'm curious. So the probate. When do you come in? Is it like a traditional? You've given us a great background of what probate is. Talk about the timing of the business, and it is a real thing, right? People are passing away. And it's very niche, and there's emotions involved, etc. But what problem are you solving, and at what point do you solve it? I think is the key from the timing perspective, because we all know it's so hard to get a listing at the right time, etc. And for you, what resources are you using to time that value proposition that you have to offer in your business?
So if you think about, I've never really been a fisherman, but I have gone hiking in streams, and if you think about trying to fish upstream from where the competition is. Yeah. So there's a traditional way of marketing for probates. When people file, you can buy the data and then market to the family and market to the attorney at that time. But a lot of those people have already made plans. They're going to sell the house, who the agent is. So then before that, if I have a relationship with the attorney, then they're going to recommend me before they get to the table and talk to the customer about it. And there's even before that, which is if you're somebody in my center of influence, maybe I met you, I don't know, you cut my hair, or you're my wife's doctor or something. I don't know how I would meet you, but if I have my database and I say to you, by the way, do you have an estate plan in place? I notice you own a house, it's in your name personally, but it's not in a living trust. I'm curious, are you aware of the opportunities a living trust and proper estate planning can help you by saving you money in taxes and saving your family heartache in case something should happen to you? And so I do market to my past clients the importance of an estate plan, introduce them to estate attorneys that can write those estate plans and living trusts and such. So I'm kind of in their head before they're even needing to file a probate, both with the attorney and with the family person. So I've tried to make myself an expert in probate, but that also means if I was an expert in cancer as a doctor, I want to teach you how to avoid cancer, not just be the best at treating you when you get cancer. So the best way to avoid probate is typically an estate plan, at least a will that has what you want, at least give it in the hands of somebody who's going to know where it is at a minimum, but even better, an estate plan, so that if something happens to you, whether you die or incapacitated, whatever you want done with your assets is done by your desire. You're not letting the court or the county tell you what to do.
Okay, so I'm really glad you kind of started with, how you're really planting the seeds of getting in front of them. I think it's really what came to mind was the Dream 100 approach. I don't know if you heard that. That's Dana Derrick's book. It's in marketing. It's Dream 100 is forming relationships with the super connectors that are in front of your that starving audience, right? Or that crowd that you need to serve. It's not trying to reach out to them individually. It's trying to reach out to the person who already has control of that group.
Right.
So that just came to mind first right away. But just so we tie it together from a real estate transaction perspective, and the kind of how you talked about probate is to transfer an asset from someone who has passed to someone who's alive, and everything has to go through probate court. Where do you come in if the probate court is going to handle this transfer of an asset? I'd love to see where do you come in that workflow, so we understand that niche a little bit more.
So sometimes, if I help them avoid probate, I'm their hero, and I'm a real estate broker. I'm the natural person to talk to you about selling their house.
Interesting.
Or if I've talked to the attorney ahead of time, I have a relationship with the attorney, when the family says, gee, we have this house to sell with a probate court, the attorney's going to say, well, I happen to know an expert in selling real estate in probate court. His name is Bill Gross. Let me have him talk to you about selling your property. So I have a relationship with the attorney hopefully coming in, or the family if we're marketing to them while they're filing. Another one is we get families who start with an attorney and aren't happy with the results. Unfortunately, attorneys are very expensive. And I find most people, probate's a very specialized niche for attorneys. And it's very different than most other law work, in my opinion. Well, I'm going to give you a fact. In LA County, when I downloaded the list of probate cases in the last 2 years, less than 5% were done by an attorney who done 2 or more in the last 2 years. Meaning 95% of cases.
One more time, Bill. I want to digest it. I don't think I captured that.
95% of probate cases are handled by attorneys who that's their only probate case in the last 2 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He does corporations, divorces, commercial stuff, real estate stuff. But he hasn't done a probate in 2 years. So that's kind of like a real estate agent saying, well, I have a license that lets me sell, say, commercial. But are you familiar with a commercial listing form? I'm not. I would never list the property as commercial. It's a lot of money. Sure, I would partner with a commercial agent and I would handle the relationship and let him handle the process. But attorneys don't do that too often. They will. The good ones do. The good ones are very hyper niched. Like in probate, the best attorneys are either probate litigators only. They will not do a regular probate. They only want litigation. And the other ones are probate administrators. They don't handle litigation. They just file the paperwork at a high volume and a low cost. but 95% of cases are done by people who they do one a year, one every 2 years. So
what's the difference with, just so we understand before you go too far, the probate litigation, probate admin, just to give a little bit of context there.
Probate litigation means there's two people who have a disagreement and they're going to each get attorneys and they're going to fight out in court. And they're each going to spend $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 fighting each other. And the attorneys they're litigators. That's a big job. It's a lot of work. It's discovery. That's cross-examinations and deposit, interrogatories. So I have attorneys who don't take regular probates. They won't take it unless there's $1 million of equity available, because they know they're going to get paid on contingency and they're looking to get $100,000 for a case. So those are litigators, and they do a high volume. They do 2 a month of probate litigation. And there's also probate administrators. All they do is process the papers. Once anybody objects to anything, they say, "Hey, we can't help you. You need to get another attorney."
Wow. And so are they working for and I'm sorry, you're dropping so much knowledge. I gotta stop you. Giving them the gems. The administrating, are they working for the court or are they working for the
No.
family? Yeah.
No, they're like a service. They're like a LegalZoom.com kind of equivalent.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
And they just do the paperwork. And then as soon as somebody objects, they go, "Hey, you need to hire a real attorney here. Here's a couple of names. Good luck."
Wow.
And then other people hire, their friend attorney who might be a really nice guy or gal, might be really smart, went to Harvard Law. I've seen guys who went to Harvard Law. They're geniuses. They're well-spoken, well-dressed. They know nothing about probate. But the other thing that I find universal about attorneys is there's no group of people who sound better when they know nothing than attorneys. If you think about all politicians are attorneys, almost 99% of all congressmen and senators and mayors and governors were attorneys. It's a fact. They all sound like they know what they're talking about even when they don't. That's the training they get in law school, is to talk on the stump about something and advocate for their position. You and I don't do that. If I don't believe it's the right thing for me to list the property, I'm going to tell you. This past client I told you about, when he called me, I said, go to the listing agent. I know her lender. He wanted this one house. I said, she has it listed. There's no way she'll let anybody else double in that deal or be on the other end. You have to go to her. You have to go to her lender. Do it if you want the house, or don't buy the house, either one. And he did it. And I kind of coached him what to do, and he bought the house through her. And so sometimes that's just how they are. You can't change that reality. So with probate, there are attorneys who they're not going to listen to, even when they're wrong. I'll look at the file and notice a mistake, and I'll call them and say, "Hey, I noticed that you missed this thing, and your petition is going to be denied. You're going to bring this contract to get approved by the judge. Unless you fix it, he's going to deny it." "Oh, no, I know what I'm doing. Thank you." "Who do you think you are?" And I've learned how to be as gentle and beat around the bush as much as possible. But generally, I just find attorneys are the hardest to work with people. You have to really check your ego and then tiptoe around their ego. It's challenging. I don't mind it, but that's the challenge of working in that space.
Interesting. So one is, so I'm just trying to understand because I think you said it very well. They got attorneys who will refer you, because essentially when a sale needs to happen, let me actually ask you this. When a sale of an asset needs to happen, you're there regardless of if it's decided by the court that it needs to be liquidated, or it's actually was in the will, and it's, I guess, if it is going through the will, is it still a sale or is it a transfer of title? I'm just trying to understand that part.
Well, the property was owned by somebody who's dead. So by definition, it has to transfer to somebody has to buy the property. It could be the heir inherits the property and doesn't want to sell it. So if they're allowed to.
Oh, okay. Interesting. But the reality is so many scenarios. Yeah.
Most people don't want to. They didn't pick that house. The house has been lived in by the decedent, is run down. There's all kinds of stuff in it.
So the next step is to sell it, and then that's when you come in.
Yeah. And even ones that don't sell, they're going to sell it in a year or two. They might say, "Well, I'll try to rent it out." So they're first-time landlord, and they don't know how much work that means to fix it up and how hard it is to get it rented. So a year later, they'll call you back and say, "Yeah, we decided to sell the house." So it's like any other real estate transaction. You have to maintain a relationship with them a year, 2 years down the road.
Yeah. What would you say? I think you've highlighted it, but I want to bring it home. What would you say is the difference in the way you've built your business versus someone who's doing it broadly? I mean, do you still think that someone who is not niching down, I think you talked about some key foundation, like building your business book. your book of business, excuse me, versus, do you think it's the same fundamentals, Bill? I think is what I'm asking. Or do you feel that when you're playing in the type of way you're playing in a very niche environment, that the rules change a little bit, and or maybe they compound? I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
I think good fundamentals are always good fundamentals. I am looking for the opportunities to compound and leverage my expertise. So, for example, I teach for people who want to get into probate. You want to have 2 or 3 different angles of attack in probate. You attack or market to the attorney, to the family, to the property, to vendors, because sometimes I'll talk to the family and they won't choose me, but they're interested in talking to me. And I talk to the attorney and find out, oh, that's that family. Oh, I was talking to them. I call the family. Oh, I've been talking to your attorney. And it just moves a little closer, and boom, I get the contract that way. So I do think there's a certain advantage. And then also just information, knowing the details I get by marketing attorneys make me better at marketing to the families. So I would definitely say that I'm looking for areas where 1 + 1 = 3. I'm looking for that kind of a marketing opportunity.
That's so interesting. So I love that you've kind of, you have vertical integration in your business, as well as now you're coaching other folks how to get into what you've already done. And that's what I call in the lab a practitioner, right? We're not ones to bring on when you just speak theory and you're not actually doing it. And it's one thing when you're able to do it and then teach it, because then you stay really sharp. And I think you know that as well. What do you think is the next thing for you? Because it sounds like you have some interesting verticals kind of that are integrated, and it's very exciting. But what's next for you? We're here, December 29th. If you're listening to this, we got a few days left in the year. What is next for Bill? You've been able to gain such great traction, and I appreciate you sharing that with us here in the lab in the last 3 years. And as we go and set foot into 2022, this being obviously good evergreen content when it comes to information, but being time sensitive in the sense that we're going to the new year, what are some things that you want to project here that we could say we heard it here first?
Well, great question. And I think you're catching me on a great day. I set a 5-year plan when I started in this business. Nice. And this is the end of year 3. And so year 4 is about me building my business nationally. I felt like I've laid the foundation. I've talked to people. I was in New York last year, Florida, looking to try to add. And then I just opened in Georgia this month. And we had referrals that went out this week in Arizona and in state of Washington. So I think that you and I both at EXP, there's unique, I don't think people even understand, as amazing as EXP is, one of the untapped amazing tools is that we're a national company. And so while I worked at Keller Williams previously in Century 21, and while we said we were an international brand and we all work together, it isn't really true. In XP, we really have a culture of working together. And I literally can put a referral into my daily social media tool for our company, we call Workplace, and get responses within the hour. And I can vet those people much more easily because they're intercompany, what programs they involved with, who do they know that I know. It's a whole different level. As well as recruit people to bring people to my team. I know other people with the XP in their market area to connect them to, or the state broker in Georgia. I can look it up and make that introduction. So I think one of the real values, and I think like a lot of business had become more national. If you think about restaurants, in the old days, every restaurant was local. Now every neighborhood has national steakhouses and national, upgraded hamburger places. Real estate's becoming a national business too. We're part of it at EXP for sure. So my business is starting to grow nationally, where I can leverage my time by talking to people across the country and makes it profitable for me, as well as I think gives us all better service because I can learn from people in other markets and bring it to my business too.
I love that. And it's so funny. I feel like you're twinning here because I was in Keller Williams as well and made the recent transition. And we're in a very niche for you guys listening. You guys know that I'm short-term rentals, fully integrated. So we help buy, we help manage, and we help launch and do the whole thing. So it's always interesting to hear another fellow national a partner here that I have, Bill Gross here in the lab with us, who, is known as the LA probate expert, but is looking to go national, and why not? One thing, I got a personal question here I want to ask myself as we're kind of gearing up, because I was having this conversation with a friend about, you talk about going national, and I'm kind of thinking, we have the same mindset of kind of, okay, growth. What does that growth look like? Just curious, when you because I had my friend ask, say, okay, Ruben, so how do you think you're going to do that? And I surround myself with mentors and coaching, etc. Always educating myself, but I'm curious as to you, when you're looking to make this big leap, and leap of and again, calculated leap, because you talk about your business plan. How are you bridging that gap from implementation? And this is the reason I'm asking this is end of year, we have goals, we set goals, but I think sometimes we fail to reverse engineer what it takes to get to a goal. So I'm curious to think about, what is your thought process when you put out a goal, a 5-year plan, maybe even just reducing it to next year? What does that look like when you're putting that on paper or whatever you put it on? And then you say, okay, what is it going to take for me to actually be able to go national, whatever goals you have, for our listeners, whatever goals that you have, what does it look like for you? How do you make it turn into a reality?
Well, so you begin with the end in mind, right? And what do I want my business to look like 5 years from now was the question I asked myself.
Yeah.
I was 60, I'll be 65. So my plan at 65 is not to have to work every day. My vision is to be on a cruise ship for a month with my wife and grandkids and children and
the dog.
Well, not the dog. My wife has to board. It's my wife's dog. It's not my dog.
No, I just had to put that in there. No,
I throw the dog overboard if I get away with it. But, I'm not a dog guy. I love my wife. I don't love the dog. So I set that plan out, and I can see myself after that. Coaching and helping other people build their business. But I don't see myself listing property and selling houses after 65. That was my original vision. What do I want to do? I'd like to move to South Florida. That's my vision in my life. So I backed it all out and said, well, how am I going to do that? And so one would be to build a business that could move, as well as not depend on me selling houses in Los Angeles County. So I felt like I have about 2 more years as a salesperson here. But I wanted to launch a national business I could grow into. But here's the thing. The national business has to support the local business. It has to work together. There has to be some synergy. 1 + 1 has to equal 3. So, for example, I do my own video podcast, probateweekly.com, where I talk about probate real estate. And it's designed for investors, wholesalers, lead generation for me, families of probate, lead generation for me, attorneys and vendors who might pop on there or see it recorded, lead generation referrals for me. Other realtors, attraction, growing my team down the road. But by adding realtors in other states, I've increased the audience. I was able to easily double my audience. And as a result of that, more people who are in LA see it because of the audience being bigger. YouTube goes, wow, this thing's pretty hot. You got 40 people on the call, and you're getting 100 views. We'll show it to a few more people. So it has to all work together is my concept. It has to synergize, or else it doesn't make sense. So I'm only growing nationally with people who are going to help me be a better salesperson in Los Angeles and help me get more listings in Los Angeles. For now.
Love that. I couldn't agree more with you when it comes to having that synergy. One thing that I always say is like no wasted momentum, and I think you kind of alluded to it too, as work in the beginning, work for I think we're in an economy right now where everybody is hiring, where we do need that. So be very strategic, it sounds like, in the environment that you choose to exchange and your time for, and at the same time learn in, and then kind of do exactly what you did, vertically integrate it in your life. It sounds like a vertical and horizontal approach, so that everything feeds one another, and that momentum, that compound effect kind of over time really just feeds that goal and waters the plant to that goal that you have. So really good way to put it. I appreciate you I have to say, you have a very interesting, and I like to give credit where credit is due. You have a very unique way to tie things together and give a very, different paradigm shift on what appear to be common thoughts, but you tie it and put it in a way that really works well. For the sake
Thanks.
of us just wrapping up the show today in the lab, I want to make sure I give an opportunity to make sure that we can stay in touch with you. Look, you did mention it, so I want to give you a little bit of an alley-oop here, the Probate Weekly, and I see that that's on here, and I see that you're on LinkedIn as well, Bill Gross. But as far as giving you a call to action, where can people tune in to what you're doing the most, to tune into your ecosystem, tune into your talks? Where can people find out about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm most active on YouTube, but I'm all social media. I'm Bill Gross EXP. So I'm on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. But I run 2 programs every week, probateweekly.com, and the other one's realestateinvestingzoom.com. Love to have you as a guest, talk about short-term rentals. We have to talk about that offline, because I know it's a hot topic and people are interested in it, and I've struggled with it a little bit here in LA, but perhaps having a national focus, again, that gives you, same as me, having a national focus gives you some opportunities to work with customers that otherwise are closed off. So, but realestateinvestingzoom.com, and then those get live streamed. You can either register and go to the Zoom, or you can watch it live on YouTube, or we record it and we play it there as well.
Absolutely. Like I always say, if you're driving, keep your hands on the wheel. We will include that in the show notes. And just like that, we want to thank you, Bill, for being in the lab. And just like that, we are out.